Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hopefully, you all are having a great start to your weekend, a great Friday so far. I know a lot of people just got heavily impacted by this major winter storm that's wrapping up across the eastern U.S., and it's still hitting areas of Boston pretty good right now with some freezing rain, but this will continue to clear off the eastern U.S., and then some quiet weather will begin to dominate really the weather maybe over the next 5 to 10 days. There's not going to be a ton to talk about, guys, but what we're going to do is start to take a look ahead at what I think is going to be a somewhat favorable pattern for some activity. Activity not necessarily meaning a snowstorm in the south, but a favorable setup for potentially an active and stormy pattern as we get into the mid part of the month. But it's been an active last month, so I'm actually going to have to adjust to not constantly looking at updates, constantly just updating you guys, and I'm gonna have to adjust to just mellowing out and just resting up. I'm gonna take advantage of this time. It's been a lot of good, but I am mentally exhausted just from like I've told y'all guys who follow me on social media and even on YouTube. You know, the growth has been crazy, and I haven't even had a time to really adjust, to really realize what has happened and what y'all have done to my life. So I really appreciate you guys. But the growth in these slow times and the consistent of you guys watching my content during the slow times means the world. And there's going to be slow times in the weather world, but it's the weather. It's going to always get active again. We're going to always need to keep people aware. So thank y'all for tuning in, regardless if the weather's active or just kind of slow. So I appreciate all the support. If you guys have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button for me. Like the video if you like it. Hit me up on my social media links. I'm trying to get to 10K likes on Facebook. That's a big goal of mine this year. And I appreciate all the amazing support. You guys got anything I can pray about? Please put it in the comments below, guys. A lot of people pray for one another. We all pray for one another. I read over all these comments. I pray for it. But it ain't just me praying for it. You got a ton of people praying for over all these prayers. So take advantage of that, guys, for sure. Here we go. Take a look at Boston. You guys are having a messy evening commute. Definitely a night to just stay on indoors. A lot of sleet, a lot of freezing rain. There's some reports of snow. This is more cold air is funneling in all levels of the atmosphere. So therefore, you're starting to lose more of these reports of just freezing rain. You're starting to mix with more sleet and snow. But you guys are pretty much froze up here in the Northeast. In fact, you know, most of the country is froze up right now, unless you're in the Southeast. But going forward here, we'll look at the latest H-triple arm on. I want to show you this before we start looking ahead at the latest information for the long range. There is a chance for some flurries for areas that, you know, typically don't see a whole lot of snow. Around the North Carolina-Virginia border, maybe just north of Raleigh. I would not be surprised if sometime tomorrow morning there's a little bit of leftover moisture here. Just some flurries flying around here, so I would not be surprised. Watch out here in the eastern sections of Virginia and North Carolina for some flurries. I do want to mention that because I don't want people to say, oh, man, I was not expecting, they weren't calling for flurries. But anyways, it wouldn't make a big deal. It's just some flurries flying around. But anyways, let's get going here. This is basically showing troughing and ridging. Okay, so the blue is troughing, which is cold front. The red is ridging, which when you have a ridge over you, basically you're getting above average temperatures. When you have troughing, you have a cold front, which normally means that you could potentially have a stormy and a colder pattern. Not necessarily stormy, but, you know, a colder pattern. So going forward here, we're getting into next week. The pattern kind of doesn't become zonal, but it just gets inactive. It really just gets, it's just not active at all. We're getting into next week, and then you start to see late next week into next weekend the potential for a consistent troughing showing up and almost like a Rex block showing up here, which means you got a big time high pressure over the Pacific Northwest, and you have just big time ridging. It's called a positive PNA, which is ridging in the west, which basically means you have above average temperatures in this area. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, a lot of people who are really geeked up in the weather world, like me, when you hear positive PNA, you're thinking, okay, well, you're starting to get a favorable pattern for winter weather. Not necessarily. What that does help is to get us cold shots, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a snowstorm in areas that normally don't see it. But what I do see here is we're getting into next weekend. You see this blue showing up over the central and eastern U.S. That tells me that we might get some shots of cooler air or cold air as we're getting into the middle part of this month. I was about to say next month. Of this month. And this kind of continues to show up as we get into the middle part of the month. And after that, just not sure what's going to happen. So that is kind of the next time frame to really zone in on, is the middle part of this month, which if you think about it, it's only in another anywhere, whatever you consider the middle part of the month, whatever dates that is. But really, from the 12th to the 16th time frame is going to be the time frame that I really think we need to watch for some kind of storm system and there being enough cold air around to make it a winter storm. So we'll look at the latest GFS and what does it show? So we're getting into next week. Watch this low pressure. This has been kind of flirting around with wanting to borderline give the northeast event, but I don't think it's going to. You got a little bit of a quick shot of cold air next week, but that kind of moves in. And then the pattern gets kind of zonal, but not necessarily, but there's just not a lot going on. Some cold air starts to ooze in from the north, and then you're going to get some clipper action over the Great Lakes region and Ohio Valley. But really, all this really favors is maybe some northwest flow events for the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. And maybe something next weekend around this time, which is 7 days out. Maybe some kind of system tries to pop off here and gives the Northeast a quick hitting system. But there's so much going on here. I'm going to take a look at the upper level energy too here in a second, which is going to show all these pieces of energy flying around, but nothing's really coming together at all. But we get on through next weekend. We're in the middle of next weekend, and we've been watching this system that's been consistently showing up. But it's really the latest one wants it to be like a lake low, which pretty much just gives the Great Lakes area snow, areas that are accustomed to snow at this time of the year. But you back it up to this run, which is the 12Z run, and you got a lot more snow a lot further south, a cold air chasing moisture event. But I really am watching around the Valentine's Day period for some kind of system. I don't know if it's going to be a big time system, but what I do know is it's about 8 to 10 days out, and it's hard to take any kind of signal serious. But there is a consistent signal right here for some kind of storm system. There's also been hints at a low pressure right here that could merge with this and phase and be a bigger system. But after that, it looks like a pretty decent shot of cold air moves in as we're getting to the middle part of the month, and that's what that signal is consistently showing. And as we're getting into about the 10 to 12 day range, which is a very unreliable range in the weather world, maybe some snow starts showing up here. You got a little bit of snow showing up in the Carolinas, but like I said, you can't take none of this serious at all. You really can't. But I think that this pattern coming up is a pattern where something can pop up inside 7 days and really be kind of a sleeper event and just not necessarily catch anybody by surprise, but suddenly in the medium range, which I consider around the 5 to 8 day range, suddenly something pops up and this is something worth tracking. So moving after that, it doesn't really matter because it gets way too far out. But you're looking at temperatures, excuse me, guys, remember, I got a little head cold. I'm a little congested. I've already saw you guys in the comments notice that I sound a little different. I'm very congested right now. But going through, as far as temperatures, how does that respond to what we just saw in the GFS? Well, really, there's nothing too crazy showing up. The Ohio Valley looks very cold. I think because of this snowpack here, I think the GFS is probably showing you guys a little bit too cold. But there's some pretty cold air up in the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes area. But really, I just don't see anything that's unheard of for this time of the year. We're starting to get a little deeper into February now, so we're starting to lose the heart of winter, which that doesn't matter, guys. We've seen some crazy storms in February. In fact, here in the Southeast, February is an extremely active month, winter weather-wise. That's kind of when we've had some of our biggest storms is in February. But as we're getting into the weekend, here's a cold shot of air. Polar vortex. A piece of the vortex might drop down here. How fleeting is it? Is it long lasting? All I can tell you is this air in Canada off the latest GFS looks extremely cold. Now this isn't in Celsius, this is in Fahrenheit. So you got -30, -40 degrees Fahrenheit showing up in Canada. And this looks like a decent shot of cold air. And we're in the 7 to 8 to 9 day range here. But how far south does this cold air penetrate? And is there any kind of storm around? That's a big question mark. But this is some big time cold air showing up, and it's starting to ooze into the Great Lakes area as we're getting into next weekend. So next weekend, I think, is going to be cold for sure for a lot of people. And then after that, maybe another shot of cold air. And that's what we're seeing as we're rolling through the next 14 days. We're seeing consistent cold fronts showing up. As far as anomalies, as far as temperatures compared to average, the blues are colder than average. The reds are warmer than average. Going forward here, You're seeing colder than average temperatures, but you're not. I don't see anything that screams an Arctic air mass for areas very far south. Now, I think it could be very cold for areas in the Great Lakes area, but I don't see anything too crazy or anything like that. So going forward here, it just to me, I don't see a gigantic Arctic air mass dropping down. Now, I think there's some very cold air up in Canada, but I just don't see anything that screams an Arctic air mass. I really don't, or an Arctic outbreak or anything like that. But what I can tell you is, with all the troughing going on, as we're getting forward here in time, we're getting into next weekend. There's a lot of pieces of energy flying around, and you have to wonder: are these going to link up at some point and become a big time storm? And we're getting into late next week. You watch that system that I just mentioned on the GFS for around the Friday time frame of next week. And it doesn't really come together. It's just kind of a fleeting wave here, a piece of the northern stream that never really connects with anything in the southern stream. It rolls on by, and then here comes that other system I was talking about. The latest GFS has this more of a northern stream dominated part, and it never really connects with anything on the southern stream. So nothing really connects. You're just having pieces of energy flying around left and right, but nothing's really phasing together, and nothing's really coming together in general. What we do know is the National Weather Service for the 12th to 18th time frame of this month has the chances of below average temperatures for the entire eastern U.S. Now, how below average is that going to be? We're just not sure yet. But we'll continue to monitor this over the weekend. We're not going to talk this to death because, honestly, we need to latch on to some kind of consistency. What we do know is there's been a consistent amount of data showing up that there is going to be some cold shots coming up mid-month. But is there going to be any storm systems with it? And like I said, this is going to be a setup where I think a system could pop up out of nowhere. So stay tuned. Thank y'all for tuning in regardless if it's active or not. And I appreciate all y'all's support. Y'all have a great start to your weekend.